I'll just extend my welcome. It's wonderful that you guys are all here, that you've come out in support of the Good Hart Artist Residency. And what's nice is that you're all friends, whether it's I just met you this evening, but long-term, I'm not going to say old friends, but long-term friends of the residency. Just thank you so much. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to speak for about 10 minutes about the residency itself. And then we have special guests. We have Michael Fischer and Kelly Wilson. And they're going to talk about their experience with the residency. Michael's a 2-time alumni of the program, and Kelly Wilson, we've worked with her since 2018, putting authors and writers and artists in her school. But I'll introduce them more later. And then I'm going to talk to you about the Challenge Fund, why we're here, because our organization is at a pivotal point, and we would love to have you be part of that. First of all, before I get going, Bill, where are you? Sorry. Oh my gosh, forgot my husband, co-founder Bill Calso. Yeah. And Jeremy Wilson's over here. He's our program facilitator in the blue shirt. And then we have board members here, Liz Erlewine, Rose Fitzgerald, raise your hand. Amanda, you've been introduced already. And who am I forgetting? Oh, Michelle Boyer. I don't see Michelle. Okay, over there. And they'd happily talk to you about the residency too. So after we're done with this presentation, ask them tons of questions. If you aren't comfortable right now, please find a chair if you want or something to be comfortable, because it's going to be a little bit. Sorry, it's going to be a little bit. No, not that long. This is about 4 pages, but don't let it scare you. Okay, we are partially here because of this wonderful book, Your Brain on Art, right? Amanda Norcross is the one that found this book and recommended it to me. And maybe all of you don't know that I'm a scientific person, okay? A lot of people have asked me, oh, you run an artist residency, you must be an artist. Well, I don't identify as an artist, honestly. I worked as a biologist almost my whole life, as an environmental biologist consultant and as a teacher. So this book I really connected with. It combined art and science, and it really made sense to me, and it really validated what we do with the Good Hart Artist Residency, because art is transformational, as you will learn when you read the book. But I wanted to share one quote from David Byrne, founding member of the Talking Heads. So he wrote about the book, "Its pages provide proof for what so many of us have always known, that art, especially art in community, is transformative beyond measure." So Good Hart programming has been transformative. Transformative for the artists and the writers and the composers that get to come here. Transformative for the local hosts maybe that have worked with them. Transformative definitely for Bill and I and anybody that's worked with us. Joanne worked for us for a couple of years or worked with us. So arts is transformative to the artists, but also it's been transformative in the community. So with Good Hart, we focus on 3 pillars: art, place, and community. So the art, that's what transforms us. The place, the people that come here as artists, writers, and composers, they're transformed by this place. And we know this place from Harbor Springs to Good Hart has inspired many artists, from Odawa artists in their everyday lives, making, baskets and things that they utilized, right? To Ivan Swift's colony of artists in Chippewa Cove in the 20s and 30s. There was a little artist community just north of Good Hart. To now the Good Hart Artist Residency and the over 120 or more artists we've brought there over the years so far. So, and then the last component, community, what this book really reaffirmed for me is that art builds healthier communities. So it's why we do what we do, okay? Little history, okay? I'm going to the board over here, and I hope you take a look at the board. I used to be a teacher. You guys are just stuck right here. Like, it's not a PowerPoint presentation, but you're stuck. So the mission statement, since you can't see it, I'm going to read it. Our mission is to nurture, that's an important word, artists, writers, and composers from diverse backgrounds and disciplines by providing artist residency and community engagement, another really important word, opportunities in the unique and inspiring landscapes of Northern Michigan. So how this all got started is I got this idea in the spring of 2013, the beginning here on the poster. It wouldn't go away. And I'm sure you've all had ideas like that, the idea of doing something that just won't go away. Well, I ruminated on it a long time. And I have my daughter Megan, who is a visual artist and painter, and she and her friends all were getting out of school with art degrees, had trouble getting jobs in the arts, had trouble getting into shows. It was a struggle, had trouble building their resumes. So I was like, what can I do to help support them in the arts? Well, we had an underutilized guest space above our garage. I like to cook. We invited people up. I cooked for them. They could make art, do all that. We were actually running an artist residency before I knew what an artist residency was. So by fall of 2013, I approached Crooked Tree Art Center. It took 3 phone calls before they said okay, but then they partnered with me and we started the Good Heart Artist Residency, put out an open call that year. And by 2014, our first artist came, Kalina Vinska. But then in 2017, we decided to form our own nonprofit because we had a great relationship with Crooked Tree and still do today, but I wanted to work with other organizations in the community. Women's Resource Center, Little Traverse Conservancy, schools, library. Until now, today, we have over 20 nonprofit partners from Charlevoix to Mackinac Island that we work with. So it's really grown in our partnerships. We began construction on the new residency, and so that they would have their own space, not be above my garage. And we hosted our first writer and in 2018 and our first composer in 2021. So all along this whole thing, we have learned how to do it better, how to do it better, how to do it better. One thing that, we learned is that it can be really difficult for some people to come for an arts residency. Parent artists, right? If you're actively parenting, finding time to apply and come to an artist residency was really difficult. So we started offering a stipend for parent artists to apply. I mean, they get the stipend if they're selected, but that allowed them to bring up to 2 dependents and to bring a caregiver and the added expense that would take. Or they could use that money to care for their children at home, the added cost to care for their children at home while they came for an artist residency. We always want to be welcoming to all. And we started the Elevating Diverse Voices program in 2021 because what we learned is that artist residencies are not necessarily accessible to all, whether you have a disability, economically, whatever. So the Elevating Diverse Voices features people that are marginalized or underrepresented in the arts. So that's just our goal to be welcoming to all. And the current focus of the Elevating Diverse Voices is disabled artists. So we built the residency with accessibility in mind. And I can't even begin to tell you how underserved that population is by artist residencies and how thrilled they'll be able to come here and be able to roll right in the door, 0 clearance doorways and things like that. We had our 10th anniversary with Crooked Tree Art Center in 2023, did a 10-year show. Michael Fischer, who you'll meet later, came back for that, right? And we welcomed over 20 artists, and maybe many of you put those artists up in their homes. It was a great gathering. But at that time, we had a record number of applicants to our open call. So we were offering about 13. The most we ever did was 17 artist residencies in a year. That year, our open call, we had 529 people apply for 13 residency spaces. Somebody did the math. That's a 2% acceptance rate. Harvard has a 4% acceptance rate. So we are harder to get into than Harvard. So keeping on that, what we learned, right? So we decided to look for off-site residency possibilities. So people in the community have guest spaces. Could they give that up for two weeks in the year? And we currently now have 4 different sites where we do off-site residencies. Jamie and Barry right there are one of our hosts, and Amanda's a host this year for an off-site residency. But it also gives us the opportunity to have a cohort of people come. So in June, there's those 4 locations and the residency where there's artists, writers, and composers, and they all get to network. And it's a really cool experience. So we've learned, we keep growing over the years, but we are also looking at how we can serve the local artists, right? So we host artists and writers from around the world, but how do we feature and bring attention to the artists right here in this area? So we started doing local art shows at the residency in 2022. The local art show kind of grew to be the Tunnel of Tree Art Trail. And we do a Midsummer's Daydream event too that features poets and musicians out on the Hindle Ross property in Cross Village. So we've really extended the area we serve, Cross Village to Harbor Springs, very, very well, but even Charlevoix to Mackinac. So it's a good balance of bringing artists in from all around the world to how do we feature local art. Now we're here with the Challenge Fund. That's really why we're here tonight, and I'll talk about it a little bit after Michael and Kelly have time to talk. But we are at a transitional period where we're moving from founder, volunteer organization to how do we become, a permanent feature in Good Hart, right? One of the reasons that people associate Good Hart with art, right? So to moving to a sustainable organization, and I'll talk more about that later. And I have a note here. What we have scheduled now, we're doing an open call for the next year. By 2020, the end of, I think it's all the way through 2026 into early 2027, it'll be 140 people that we've hosted in Good Hart for artist residencies. And we just can't imagine those ripples in the pond or Lake Michigan going out from there. So in what we do, one of the most transformative things with the arts is to work with local schools. And like I said, I've worked with Kelly since 2018 with different artists and writers. And Michael has come for 2 residencies, and I'd like them to speak, to share their experience. But I want to give them their due, and I have their bios I want to read to you. So Kelly Wilson recently retired from teaching after 33 years. Oh, way to go. She spent the last 19 years at Lakeview High School in Petoskey, which is a school for adjudicated youth. Kelly's niche in teaching has always been to work with students who struggle in school for any reason. Her emphasis in working with these young people is to emphasize creativity, empathy, and connection. Kelly was also the English Language Arts Collaborative Facilitator for 7 years with the Charm School District. She ran professional development training for English language teachers across Charlevoix and Emmett counties and beyond. She even had Michael participate virtually in a couple of those meetings during the tough COVID years. And I'll introduce Michael. He will speak after Kelly. Michael Fischer, is a nonfiction writer, a storyteller, and senior manager at Jobs for the Future Center for Justice and Economic Advancement, where he helps build robust education and employment pathways for currently and formerly incarcerated people. He also leads writing and storytelling workshops for a range of organizations. Michael has received several fellowships and his writing, which has been cited as notable in Best American Essays and won the National Systems Impact Writers Contest, among other honors. His work has appeared in the New York Times, The Sun. I'm not going to list them all, Michael, sorry. A Moth Story Slam winner, Michael tells stories in Moth main stages from Honolulu to Anchorage to London, and his work appears in 2 of the Moth's New York Times best-selling books, How to Tell a Story and A Point of Beauty. He is a frequent speaker at creative and nonprofit conferences and has been featured on award-winning podcasts, including Modern Love Podcast, Ear Hustle, and another list, His work has been supported by Mellon Foundation, Art for Justice Fund, Ragdale Foundation, Aspen Institute, and others. He holds an MFA in creative writing from the University of Nevada, Reno, and an MA in humanities from the University of Chicago. Don't we draw great talent, people? It's like serious. So, all right, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly. Thank you so much.
Hello, it's truly an honor to be here. Glenn Young worked with the Conservancy, introduced me to Bill and Sue, and said, I really didn't know what it was about, I guess. I showed up to the meeting. He said, this is right up your alley, Kelly. You would love this. And so in 2018, I met them, and an author named Brynna Crofenshaw came and met with my students. And when you work with students who don't like feeling vulnerable, like none of us do, and you have an author coming in to read, and then we're going to go out into the woods together, I don't know who's going to be in my classroom. I don't know how they're going to respond. I have had kids deal with everything from addiction to extreme truancy since the early years of their life to absent parents for a whole lot of reasons. And so my whole job was I wanted them to feel safe and seen and not as exposed as they probably had felt in their whole life. So I was a little nervous about doing this myself. And then, the students teenagers are funny and they have a great sense of humor. Kind of like my grandson before I left here saying, "Don't embarrass yourself." As I was going out the door, I'm like, "You're 6. How do you get to say this to me?" So it was, the word is transformative. Brenna came in and she shared, it's just this vulnerable sharing of self in front of these students, and I watched them lean in, and then we went out into the woods to write. And Sue brought this up, I had forgotten, but when you share anything, I taught the kids, you don't have to justify anything you just say. It's sort of like a leaning in, like, thank you. That's it. When you share something, you say thank you. And so all of you being here, right? Thank you. And I just feel so lucky. Things like this fall into my lap, and I was like, come on, this is just an amazing experience for me and for the students. So we partnered with Traverse Bay Conservancy. We went out into the woods and wrote, which if you've never done that, it stays with you. And if you, then my at-risk, labeled and pigeonholed kids all stood in a circle. And I was reading, it's actually in a printout over there. I was reading some of their writings again and brought to tears over what they wrote, and how honest and beautiful and insightful they were, and how willing they were to share with this stranger that had come into their classroom who said, "Look, I'm doing it. You share with me too." And so for the rest of the year, our lives were changed, and we brought that up again and again. And then Michael comes in, and I say, like, an author is coming in, he's pretty famous, and he came in like jeans and a white t-shirt and his shaved head, and my kids just leaned in. I had one girl who would always cover her eyes. You couldn't ever talk to her without her eyes being covered, right? 'Cause she was protecting herself. And she pulled her hair back in her bright blue eyes and just leaned on in. And he read out loud this story that changed their lives and mine about what is valuable in life and the dreams you have when you are walled in. And I wish I could have the cards that they wrote to you. So we all wrote thank you cards after he left. And even reading those brought me to tears. You can't know unless you're among my students how one event does truly cause a ripple effect. And some of the stories they told afterward, because he taught them how to tell the truth in writing, I can't tell you guys like how life-changing it is. I said I wouldn't come up here and cry, but I miss them so much. So that's just it. Like, speaking your truth and finding meaning in a world that seems very chaotic and sometimes very meaningless and so hard. And the community that was instantly built in our classroom and the connection we felt with Michael. So then Michael comes in during COVID, and I wanted him to come to our ELA collaborative, which again is just all English teachers across Chatham and beyond. We had pre-COVID, we had 36 people crammed into a room, and it was amazing, positive, energetic, just beautiful people. And so COVID hit, everybody's overwhelmed, we're struggling. Nobody wants to take extra time outside of the classroom, or not the classroom, but working with their students who are also struggling for all of the reasons that we know. Michael showed up on Zoom, and the same thing happened. He shared what he had written for the Chicago Sun, was it? He couldn't get through it. We all started sharing our writing then after that, and in a world where we were so separated and so alone, we were like this for the rest of the time. That's because of Sue and Bill and Michael. So it's just, it is life-changing to be able to work with people who are so outside your comfort zone, to do things like this that are so outside your comfort zone. And I just so appreciate there were so many other people. Carter Stickles came in and presented at the collaborative. We had somebody more recently do this thing called Exquisite Course, which was crazy and interesting and fun and interactive. And my students would open themselves up and dive right in and share. And so I was transformed, and they were transformed. And that community connection gives them a sense outside of themselves. And Michael taught them probably more than anything what you can do with your life if you just try and expose yourself to all these beautiful things. And it was what I was trying to do daily. So I've been so fortunate to have things like this happen. They just land in my lap. And so when Sue asked me to come here and speak, I'm like, it's my honor and my privilege. It's not in my wheelhouse. It's not in my comfort. I can teach to any kid anywhere. I don't care how. People are teenagers. I'm like, no, they're my people. But I really wanted to pay back a little bit what they've done for so many different people, but particularly for my students. I wish I could share more of their stories with you. It was amazing. So thank you.
Well, hey everybody, I'm Michael Fischer. I didn't want to go last, but that's a lot of pressure, but it's good to see everyone here. So I'm just going to share a little bit about my relationship with Good Hart, which goes back 6 whole years now. So I first applied for a Good Hart residency when I was still in grad school. So it was kind of late 2019. And I got accepted and I was really excited. And one of the things that really drew me to Good Hart was that they state very explicitly in the application materials that community engagement is a big part of the residency. And that stuck out to me, and that they will match you with a community partner. And that really stuck out to me because for 2 reasons. One is that a lot of residencies, the strongest thing they're offering is that you'll be alone, right? You'll be alone the whole time. That's the idea. It's like you're an artist, you're special, you're gonna go off into the woods and make art, and that's great. But as an artist, as a writer, I'm always trying to connect with people. I have enough time alone. I'm a writer. So I was really looking for opportunities where I could create community. And so when they said, great, we're going to pair you with someone, I was like, fantastic. Like, that's what I want from residency. Yes, there'll be time to write. There'll be time to get into work on my practice. But there's also going to be time to actually engage and not feel so alone, which is why I got into the arts to begin with, was to not feel so alone. And the second thing was that they would do the work of making that pairing. And I think that's really important because when you're bringing in folks who aren't local, I'm not from that far away. I'm from Chicago. But there are some residencies that kind of use a model of you tell us how you're going to engage with the community. And depending on where that residency is, I'm like, well, I don't know, because I don't know your community. I don't really know who I should be engaging with there. And so having a residency that was willing to kind of do the legwork to make those connections, that already had the community partnerships to tell me what kind of the best fit was within this area was really meaningful for me, because I would not have been able to figure that out on my own. And so when I got accepted, and then a little while later, she reached out and said, great, I'm introducing you to Kelly. You're going to be able to speak to the students at Lakeview. I was really excited about that because I thought, wow, this is the absolute perfect fit. This is something, again, I never would have been able to find for myself. But now that it's in front of me, this is a really incredible opportunity. And then something really, really strange happened, which is that I got a job. I had a grad school. And so suddenly I couldn't make the full residency that I was supposed to do up in Good Hart. And I was really disappointed. But I'd have that applied being, assuming like I'm a writer, I'm not, but I had stumbled upon a full-time opportunity and I couldn't come for 2 straight weeks anymore. And so I emailed Sue and I said, listen, I'm sorry. I can't make it for the full thing anymore. And Sue, being who she was said, well, look, that's, what are those part of the time you were supposed to be here was going to be MLK weekend. It's a long weekend. Surely you at least got Monday off. So just come up for a long weekend. That way you can still go to Lakeview. We can still like make that work and you can get a little writing done. And I was like, fantastic, because again, frankly, like the part going to Lakeview was the part I was most excited about anyway. So I said, great, well, we'll make a long weekend of it. So we kind of adjusted the plan, but like I was still able to, know that I was going to need to do that. And then I don't think I've ever told Sue where it was. So then my nephew turned like 4 on that Thursday. I was supposed to go Friday. And I got really, really, really bad food poisoning at his birthday. And I was supposed to drive up Friday, and I remember being at work on Friday. I won't be too graphic, but I remember being in the basement bathroom so nobody can hear me, being very, very ill. But I knew it was food poisoning, and so I knew I wasn't contagious. And so I thought, if I could just get myself up there, I'll be okay, right? I'm not seeing the students till Monday. If I can just make it up there, I can like recover for a couple of days, and then I'll be fine when I go to talk to the students on Monday. So I'm like, kind of dizzy because I just like, everything that used to be inside me is now outside me. And so I'd already food in my stomach. And I kind of like stumble into my car and I drive 6.5 hours through a snowstorm in a Prius. Off to, like racing the store up to Good Hart. And I get in Friday night and I'm like exhausted and I'm like, lightheaded and I just kind of pass out. And And then the next night, and then I kind of recuperate over those 2 days of the weekend. And then Monday, I wake up and I go to Kelly's classroom. And it was so incredible to get to be with these students. But I'm not someone, I always wanted to be a teacher. I was the type of kid that wanted my teachers to like me, cared more about my teachers liking me than about my parents liking me. Me and my parents didn't have the relationship, but me and my parents and me and my teachers did. I really wanted my teachers to like me. I wanted them to think that I was doing a good job. That meant a lot to me growing up. And so I always idolized teachers, and I always wanted to be a teacher. And so to get to be in a classroom of these students was really amazing to me. And so really what I was trying to do when I was there was just try to, tell them the things. First of all, trying to tell them that I felt like I understand where they're at. I was able to say it. It was the first time that it felt like an asset to be able to stand in front of a room and say, look, you've been expelled. I've been expelled twice. I got expelled in high school and college. I got expelled 2 times. You've been locked up. I've been locked up, right? I could relate to them and say, but after all of that, I came out, I finished college, I got a master's degree, I got another master's degree, I got a job. I have a very full life, and you can have a very full life. And I said the thing to them that I wish somebody had said to me when I was their age, which is, you're not a bad person, you're not a bad kid. Something bad happened to you, and you made a mistake, but you're 14 years old, 15, 16 years old, everything is going to be okay. But don't get this narrative in your head that there's something wrong with you, because if you do that, it will follow you forever. And I know because it followed me. When you start telling yourself that you're not a good person, that nests deep down inside you. And no matter what anybody says, it becomes very difficult to root out. So never think that just because you're in this classroom and just because the doors are locked and at this school, don't mistake that for meaning that there's anything wrong with you. And I read some stuff, Kelly talked about that, and we did a writing exercise. And we did an exercise where I like to give people some structure. If else people would ask me to hang on to have some kind of structure, and not just be like, just write whatever you want. That's it's too broad. People can't handle that. So I said, great, we're gonna do an exercise. It's called a hermit crab essay. Because what do hermit crabs do? They hide inside other items. They make a house out of something else. And so a hermit crab essay is when you take a form that's not supposed to be an essay and you make it an essay. So you write an essay in the form of a lunch menu, or you write an essay in the form of the ingredients on a soap bottle, or something like that. And I said, great, we're gonna do an instruction manual, and I want you to write me the instructions to something that only you are an expert in. So we start writing, and of course, there's always a kid in every classroom with 5 seconds in. It's like, I'm done, right? So we get a minute in, and I said, oh, I'm done. I don't know what else to do. I said, all right. So I walk over, and I said, what reading do you have? And he had written an instruction manual about him and his friends going out partying. So step one, go to a liquor store, steal a bottle of booze and a vegetarian sandwich, and run out the door. And then he had a couple more steps. He said, well, what do you think? I don't know what to say. I said, well, that's such a weird detail that you stole a vegetarian sandwich. Yeah, you could have stolen anything. You could have stolen a bitch sandwich. Why did you steal a vegetarian sandwich? He was maybe 60 years old. He looked at me like it was the dumbest question he'd ever heard, and he said, well, because when my mother was alive, we used to eat vegetarian. And I was like, so he thought he was telling this kind of tough story about him and his friends stealing alcohol. But what he was actually telling was the story about the small ways in which he tries to stay connected to his mother now that she's dead. And I said, great, I think we should add something about that. And he said, great. And he kept working, right? And I had to come back the next day. We had a lunch. The students read some of their work. It was really incredible. And then that was January 2020. I was MLK weekend 2020. So 2 months later, I'm in my apartment, locked down, full COVID. Haven't been outside in 2 weeks. Washing my groceries with disinfectant. And a package shows up in my house, and it's from Kelly, and it's hand, colored cards from every kid in that room. And it was nerve-wracking when I was there because, they didn't say a whole lot. They seemed very attentive, but they weren't saying much, and I'm not around teenagers a lot. I remember saying to Kelly afterward, how do you think that went? Was that good? Was it good? Did they think is it good? And she said, listen, trust me. That went really well. They were engaged. They were listening. You just have to trust me. That was good. I said, okay, you're the teacher, so I'm going to trust you. But gosh, I don't know. And when those cards came, I remember some of them were quoting things that I'd said, or quoting some of the things that we read. And I realized, oh yeah, they were listening that whole time, right? They were processing in their own way, and they're not processing their own time, but they were there, and they were tuned in that entire time. And so was able to engage in some other ways that Kelly talked about during the pandemic. And then I got to go back to Kelly's classroom in, I think, February 2023. to speak to kind of new cohort of students and have that experience again, which was incredible. And I think what's interesting about Goodhart is as an artist, you're always it's interesting like what experiences have like I call it a long tail. Like what experiences have a long tail and which ones don't. Because you have a lot of experiences where like you go to a residency or you go to a conference or you publish somewhere and you never hear from those people again. They're like, great, thanks so much, and like that's it. But I think one of the most powerful things about Goodhart is that so like I said, I was first up here in January 2020. This is almost 6 years to the day, 6 years in 1 week from the first time I was ever here. And in that time, I've been here 4 times. I've been talking to Kelly, been in touch with the Kelsos that entire time. That is the longest tail of any creative engagement I've ever had. Conference, publication house, and the Moth, anybody. Like this is the longest creative relationship I've ever had. And so in terms of, the longevity of a space and the sustainability of a space, I think, and again, as someone who doesn't live in this area, I think that really speaks to is kind of the level of engagement and the kind of depth of the work that Goodhart and their partners are doing. I know it's has been really incredible for me. I'm sure there's other stuff I was going to say, but I'm forgotten also. I was going to leave you with this. As some people know, me and my partner got married on last Sunday. So we're 6 days into marriage. And because of that, obviously I'm thinking a lot about commitment, right? Thinking a lot about commitment. But I'm thinking a lot about commitment, and because when I think about like why did I get in that car like sick as a dog that night 6 years ago to drive 6.5 hours up here? And it's because I made a commitment, right? I made a commitment to build a studio that I was going to comms. I didn't want to disappoint them. I didn't want to say, oh, I know you already accommodated me by making this shorter and being flexible around my work schedule, but now on top of that, I'm not coming because I have food poisoning. I had made a commitment to Kelly. I didn't want to tell Kelly, oh, actually, I'm not coming, and then had to think about, well, God, I'm sure she's already told all the students I'm coming, and now I'm not going to be there. And how many adults have already let these kids down, and now we're going to be told that this person who we were told were going to come speak to us because he thought this was important, I guess doesn't think it's important anymore because he's not here. It was because I wanted to keep the commitments that I made. And I'm here still 6 years later because I believe in that commitment. And so I said that to say that, I hope some of you folks in the room tonight will make a commitment to Goodhart and help keep it going strong. So thanks.
Thank you for listening. If you're interested in learning more about the Goodhart Artist Residency and the Challenge Fund, please go to goodhartartistresidency.org/challenge-fund. If you're interested in supporting the Challenge Fund, please send your donation to P.O. Box 182, Harbor Springs, Michigan 49740, or visit goodhartartistresidency.org/challenge-fund to make an online donation. And thank you.